Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet slowly grow larger on his screens. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease. The readings were clear. This was a young world with primitive beings who barely knew how to leave their own atmosphere. "Status report," he commanded in his deep, rumbling voice. "Sir, we count approximately 8 billion life forms on the planet's surface," reported his second-in-command. "They use crude chemical rockets and basic radio waves. Their most advanced weapons appear to be simple atomic devices." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his people. In his 300 years of conquest, he had seen dozens of worlds like this. The pattern was always the same: send in the fleet, demonstrate superior firepower, and watch the primitives surrender within hours. His 200 warships had never needed more than a day to claim victory. "Prepare the standard bombardment sequence," he ordered. "Target their major population centers. A few plasma strikes should convince them to submit." Far below on the planet's surface, Captain Jake Morrison paced the bridge of the USS Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The vessel hung in orbit, hidden behind the moon where alien sensors couldn't detect it. Jake had spent the last 6 hours watching the enemy fleet take position around Earth. "How many ships are we looking at?" Jake asked his tactical officer. 200 confirmed, sir. All of them bigger than anything we've ever built. Energy readings are off the charts. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. At 35, he was young for a ship commander, but the last decade of preparing for this moment had aged him. Every human leader had known this day would come eventually. The universe was too big for Earth to remain hidden forever. Dr. Lisa Grant worked frantically at her console in the ship's science lab. As Earth's chief expert on alien communication, she had been trying to establish contact with the invaders for the past hour. Every message she sent went unanswered. Every attempt at peaceful communication was ignored. "Jake, they're not responding to anything," she called over the intercom. "Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, even basic pictographs, they're acting like we don't exist." On the planet below, General Pete Walker stood in the Pentagon's war room, watching satellite feeds of the alien fleet. Red lights flashed across dozens of screens as military bases around the world reported ready status. Submarine commanders waited for orders in the depths of the oceans. Fighter pilots sat in cockpits, engines warmed and weapons armed. "Sir, incoming transmission from the alien fleet," a communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Vexitar's imposing figure. His alien features were both reptilian and insectoid, with gleaming black eyes and armored skin. When he spoke, the universal translator rendered his words in clear English. "Primitive beings of the third planet, I am Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world now belongs to the Galactic Confederation. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and you will suffer." General Walker stepped forward. "This is General Pete Walker of the United Earth Defense Force, and we reject your demand. This is our world and we will defend it." Vextar's mandibles clicked again. "Foolish creatures, you have no concept of the forces arrayed against you. Observe." 3 of his ships moved into position above New York City, their weapons charged with blue-white energy, ready to demonstrate the futility of human resistance. Vextar expected to see panic, surrender, perhaps desperate pleas for mercy. He had seen it all before on countless worlds. Instead, something impossible happened. The ocean 50 miles east of New York suddenly erupted as a massive black shape broke the surface. The USS Montana, a nuclear submarine that had been hiding in the deep, launched 16 ballistic missiles in rapid succession. Each missile climbed toward space, their nuclear warheads locked onto the 3 alien ships. At the same time, 6 fighters that had been invisible to alien sensors suddenly appeared around the ships. Earth's newest stealth technology had kept them hidden until the moment they struck. Plasma cannons and energy weapons tore into alien hulls as the fighters danced between the larger vessels. High above, 4 orbital defense platforms that the aliens had somehow missed in their initial scans opened fire. Particle beams and railgun rounds slammed into the alien formation. Commander Vextar watched in shock as his 3 ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The impossible had happened. The primitives had hurt him. His advanced sensors had missed human weapons. His intelligence had been completely wrong. Impossible, he muttered. Their technology readings showed chemical rockets and radio waves. "Sir, they're launching more missiles," his tactical officer reported. "Hundreds of them from locations all over the planet. And sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from installations we never saw before." Around the globe, humanity's true military might reveal itself. Nuclear submarines surfaced in every ocean, launching their full payloads. Hidden missile silos opened across continents. Orbital weapons platforms that had been disguised as space junk came online. Fighter squadrons that had been hiding in asteroid fields struck from unexpected angles. The battle that Commander Vexitar had expected to last minutes stretched into hours. Every time his forces destroyed a human position, 2 more appeared from nowhere. The primitive chemical rockets turned out to be decoys. The real human weapons were far more advanced than any scan had revealed. Dr. Lisa Grant watched the battle. From the USS Defiance, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to happen. She had dreamed of peaceful meetings, of sharing knowledge and culture. Instead, she watched her species fight for its very survival. But, as the hours passed, something remarkable happened. The tide of battle began to turn. The alien fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours before, found itself being picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight fair. Human tactics made no sense. Their weapons appeared from impossible locations. Their pilots flew like they had nothing to lose. Captain Jake Morrison coordinated the orbital defense, watching alien ships fall one by one. "Lisa, get me a channel to their commander." When Vextar's image appeared on screen, the alien leader looked shaken. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by beings he had dismissed as primitives. "Commander," Jake said calmly, "you came here expecting an easy victory. You thought we were helpless. You were wrong. Leave our system now, or we'll destroy every last one of your ships." Vextar stared at the human captain. In all his years of conquest, no primitive world had ever made such a demand. No species had ever turned the table so completely. His tactical computers were screaming warnings about human capabilities that seemed to defy logic. "This is impossible," Vextar said. "Our sensors showed you were primitive. Your technology readings were centuries behind ours." Jake smiled grimly. "Maybe your sensors aren't as good as you think. Maybe we're not as primitive as we appear. Or maybe you just don't understand humans very well." With his fleet reduced to less than half its original strength and facing enemies that seemed to materialize from thin air, Commander Vextar made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He ordered the retreat. As the surviving alien ships jumped to hyperspace, Earth's defenders watched them go. The first battle was over, but everyone knew it was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew that humans existed, and that they were not the helpless primitives they had appeared to be. The human problem had just begun. Dr. Kethmos adjusted his 6 eyes as he studied the strange samples under his microscope. The human blood cells looked ordinary enough, but every test he ran produced impossible results. In his 400 years as the Confederation's leading xenobiologist, he had never encountered anything like this. "Assistant Velara, bring me the toxin resistance data again," he called to his aide. The young scientist hurried over with a data pad. "Sir, the results are the same as yesterday. The human cells survived exposure to 17 different poisons that kill every other known species within minutes." Kethmos shook his head in disbelief. The human samples had been collected from the battlefield 3 months ago, after Commander Vextar's embarrassing defeat. The Confederation Council had demanded answers. How had such primitive beings destroyed half of their invasion fleet? The answer, they believed, lay in understanding human biology. "What about the atmospheric tests?" Kethmos asked. "Even stranger, sir. Human cells can function in oxygen levels that would suffocate most species, but they also adapt to low oxygen environments. Within hours, their blood chemistry literally changes to match the conditions. Across the galaxy, On a secret research station hidden in an asteroid field, the real experiments were taking place. Marine Sergeant Amy Collins sat in a sterile cell, her hands bound with energy restraints. She had been captured during the first battle when her fighter was shot down over the Pacific Ocean. Amy was 28 years old, a career soldier from Texas who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions. She had expected to die fighting the aliens. She had not expected to become their test subject. The door to her cell hissed open, and 3 alien figures entered. The lead scientist, Dr. Ralvin, looked like a cross between a spider and a tree, with long, thin limbs and bark-like skin. His 2 assistants were smaller, more insect-like creatures that scuttled around on 4 legs each. Subject 779, prepare for atmospheric adjustment test, Dr. Ralvin announced in his clicking voice. Amy had stopped responding to their questions weeks ago. She had also stopped being afraid. Whatever these creatures were planning, she would endure it. Marines didn't break no matter what. The air in her cell began to change. The oxygen level dropped steadily, replaced by a mixture of gases that would kill most alien species. Amy felt herself getting dizzy, but she forced herself to stay conscious. Her heart rate increased, pumping blood faster through her body. After an hour, something remarkable happened. Amy's breathing steadied, her dizziness faded. Her body had somehow adapted to the poisonous atmosphere. Dr. Ralvin watched his instruments in amazement. Impossible. Her cellular structure is changing in real time. Look at these readings. His assistant examined the data. Sir, her red blood cell count has increased by 30%. Her lung capacity has expanded. It's like her body is redesigning itself. Continue the test. Add the Kepler-7 toxin to the atmosphere. The new gas was introduced into Amy's cell. It was a biological weapon that the Confederation had used to clear entire planets of life. Every known species died within minutes of exposure. Amy breathed it in and felt a burning sensation in her lungs, but she didn't die. Instead, her body began to process the toxin. Her immune system, designed by millions of years of evolution on a hostile planet, treated the alien poison like any other infection. White blood cells surrounded the foreign molecules, broke them down, and created antibodies. Sir, this is unprecedented, the assistant whispered. Her immune system is not just resisting the toxin, it's learning from it. Dr. Ralvin made detailed notes. The human body was a biological impossibility. It was fragile enough that simple viruses could kill it, yet tough enough to survive massive trauma. It was weak enough that small injuries could prove fatal, yet strong enough to adapt to conditions that destroyed other species. Begin the virus exposure test, he ordered. The researchers introduced a sample of the Red Death, a plague that had wiped out 3 civilizations. The virus was engineered to attack nervous systems and had never met a species it couldn't kill. Amy felt the fever hit her like a truck. Her temperature spiked, her head pounded, and every muscle in her body ached. For 3 days she lay on the floor of her cell, barely conscious. The alien doctors watched, expecting her to die. On the 4th day, Amy opened her eyes and sat up. Water, she croaked. Dr. Ralvin rushed to his instruments. According to every test, the human should be dead. The virus had attacked her nervous system exactly as designed, but somehow her body had fought back. The virus is still in her system, he told his assistant. But it's different now. It's been changed. The Red Death virus had indeed been changed. Amy's immune system had not just defeated it. It had captured it, studied it, and turned it into something new. The virus was still present in her blood, but now it worked for her instead of against her. What the alien scientists didn't realize was that the modified virus was airborne. 2 days later, Dr. Ralvin began to feel sick. It started as a mild headache, nothing serious. By evening, he was running a fever. By morning, he was delirious. His assistant found him collapsed in the laboratory, his bark-like skin turning pale and brittle. The same symptoms were appearing throughout the research station. The virus that Amy's body had created was spreading through the alien crew, but this new version didn't kill. Instead, it did something far stranger. It made the infected aliens think differently. Their logical, orderly thought processes became chaotic and unpredictable. They began making decisions based on emotion rather than reason. The station's security systems went offline as infected guards forgot their duties. Scientists abandoned their experiments to stare out windows at the stars. The orderly alien minds that had designed the perfect prison were falling apart. Amy walked out of her unlocked cell and found the corridor empty. The few aliens she encountered were sitting on the floor, looking confused and lost. The virus in her blood had done more than make her immune. It had turned her into a weapon. She made her way to the station's communication center and sent out a distress signal on human frequencies. Within hours, a rescue ship arrived to find the research station in chaos. Captain Ben Parker, who led the rescue mission, found Amy in the station's medical bay, trying to help the sick aliens. "Sergeant Collins, what happened here?" he asked. Amy looked up from the alien patient she was treating. "I got sick, sir, but I got better. They didn't." The rescue team brought Amy home, but they also brought something else: blood samples from the infected aliens. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading expert in biological warfare, studied the samples for weeks. "This is unprecedented," she told the Defense Council. "The virus has somehow learned to cross species barriers. It affects alien nervous systems in ways we don't fully understand." General Mike Foster leaned forward in his chair. "Are you saying that Sergeant Collins has become some kind of biological weapon?" "Not intentionally, sir, but her immune system has created something new. A virus that can jump between species and alter brain chemistry. The aliens tried to study us, and instead they created something they can't control." News of the incident spread through the Confederation like wildfire. The official report was brief but terrifying. Humans were walking biological weapons. Their immune systems could take any virus, any toxin, any biological weapon, and turn it into something new and unpredictable. Dr. Kethmos read the report in his laboratory, surrounded by human blood samples he no longer dared to study. The biological research program was shut down immediately. No one wanted to risk creating another incident like the one at the asteroid station. In the Confederation Council chambers, leaders from a dozen species debated the human problem. They had tried to understand human biology and nearly caused a plague that could have spread across the galaxy. "The humans are more dangerous than we thought," announced Council Leader Zorthak. "Their bodies are weapons that can adapt to any threat we use against them." Ambassador Meltar, who had been studying human culture, stood to address the Council. "Perhaps the problem is not their biology, but our approach. We keep trying to use our weapons against them, and they keep turning those weapons into their own advantages." "Then what do you suggest?" Zorthak asked. "Maybe we need to stop trying to kill them," Meltar replied. "Every time we attack humans, they become stronger. Every weapon we use, they adapt to. Every poison we create, they turn into medicine. The harder we try to destroy them, the more dangerous they become." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just hard to kill. They were impossible to kill using conventional methods. Every attempt to destroy them only made them more dangerous. The biological warfare program was officially ended that day. The Confederation had learned a valuable lesson. When fighting humans, the biggest threat wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their bodies themselves, evolved on a hostile world to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Amy Collins returned to active duty 3 months later, cleared by medical teams who still didn't fully understand what had happened to her. She carried in her blood the proof that humans were unlike any other species in the galaxy, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they were survivors who could turn any attack into an advantage. The galaxy was beginning to understand. Commander Zilrath floated in the meditation chamber of his flagship, his crystalline body pulsing with soft purple light. As the leader of the Mindbenders from Proxima Theta, he had broken the will of entire civilizations without firing a single shot. His species had evolved beyond physical warfare long ago. Why destroy bodies when you could shatter minds? "Commander, we have completed our analysis of human psychological patterns," reported his lieutenant, a smaller crystal being that flickered with nervous energy. Zilrath's light grew brighter with interest. The Confederation had called upon his people after the biological research disaster. If humans could not be killed by disease or poison, perhaps they could be destroyed by despair. "Show me what you have learned," Zilrath commanded. The chamber filled with holographic images of human history. Battles, wars, atrocities, genocide, thousands of years of violence and cruelty displayed in perfect detail. Zilrath absorbed the information through his crystalline structure, feeling the weight of human darkness. "Fascinating," he murmured. "They are a species that has perfected the art of destroying themselves. Their capacity for evil exceeds most civilizations we have studied." His lieutenant pulsed with agreement. "Yes, Commander. Our plan is simple. We broadcast their own history back to them, show them what they truly are, force them to confront their darkest moments. No species can maintain morale when faced with the truth of their own evil." On Earth, Colonel Dan Murphy stood in the basement of a military facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The Psychological Defense Corps had been formed after intelligence reports warned of an incoming mental attack. Dan was a veteran of 3 wars, but he had never faced an enemy that attacked thoughts instead of bodies. Dr. Kate Williams worked beside him, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she monitored global communications networks. As the world's leading expert in trauma psychology, she had been recruited to help humanity survive whatever was coming. "Dan, we're picking up massive energy signatures in orbit," Kate announced. "Whatever they're planning, it's starting now." High above Earth, Zilrath's fleet took position. Unlike the warships that had attacked before, these vessels were built for psychological warfare. Their hulls were covered with transmission arrays capable of broadcasting directly into human minds. "Begin the operation," Zilrath commanded. "Show them the Holocaust." The first wave hit Earth like a mental tsunami. Every television, radio, computer screen, and mobile device on the planet suddenly displayed the same horrific images. Concentration, camps, gas chambers, mass graves. The worst atrocity in human history played out in perfect, nauseating detail. Zilrath expected to see immediate results. Humans would break down in tears, overwhelmed by shame and despair. They would lose the will to fight, crushed by the weight of their own evil. Instead, something unexpected happened. In New York, a group of Holocaust survivors gathered in a community center, watching the broadcasts with sad but determined faces. 80-year-old Ruth Cohen, who had survived Auschwitz as a child, stood up and addressed the room. "They think this will break us," she said quietly. "They think showing us our worst moments will make us surrender, but they don't understand what these images really mean." She pointed at the screen, where Allied soldiers were liberating a concentration camp. "They show us the camps, but they also show us the liberation. They show us the evil, but they also show us those who stood against it." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Instead of despair, humans responded with determination. Instead of shame, they felt pride in those who had fought against darkness. Zilrath watched his instruments in confusion. The response is not what we predicted. Their stress levels are elevated, but they are not breaking. Lieutenant, begin Phase 2. The second wave showed different horrors. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki played on every screen, followed by images of radiation victims in destroyed cities. Zilrath was certain this would crush human spirits. In Hiroshima, 75-year-old Kenji Tanaka sat in the Peace Memorial Park, watching the broadcasts with his granddaughter. He had been 5 years old when the bomb fell, and he remembered the heat, the light, and the terrible silence that followed. "Grandfather, why aren't you crying?" his granddaughter asked. Kenji smiled sadly and pointed to the memorial behind them. "Because they show us the bomb, but they cannot show us what came after. They cannot show us how we rebuilt. They cannot show us how we chose peace instead of revenge." Around the world, humans responded to each psychological attack with something the aliens had never encountered before: resilience born from experience. When shown slavery, they talked about abolition. When shown war, they discussed peace treaties. When shown destruction, they pointed to reconstruction. Dr. Kate Williams monitored the global response from her command center. Dan, this is incredible. They're trying to break us by showing us our worst moments. But humans have already processed these traumas. We've already learned from them. Colonel Dan Murphy nodded grimly. That's the thing about humans, Kate. We don't forget our mistakes. We remember them, learn from them, and try to do better. Commander Zilrath was becoming desperate. Phase 3 involved broadcasting images of human violence and cruelty in real time, showing every act of murder, abuse, and hatred happening across Earth. Surely this would overwhelm them. Instead, humans responded by showing acts of kindness and heroism. For every image of violence, they countered with images of rescue workers, doctors, teachers, and ordinary people helping each other. Social media filled with stories of human compassion that outnumbered the dark images by millions to one. This is impossible, Zilrath's lieutenant pulsed frantically. According to our models, they should be catatonic by now. No species can maintain morale when confronted with this level of psychological assault. Zilrath himself was beginning to feel the strain. His crystalline structure was dimming as doubt crept into his mind. Perhaps our models are wrong. Perhaps humans are not like other species. The final phase was the most desperate. Zilrath ordered his fleet to broadcast every human fear they could identify. Images of death, disease, loneliness, failure, and meaninglessness. The psychic assault was so intense that several of his own crew members began to crack under the pressure. On Earth, the response was swift and unexpected. Instead of cowering in fear, humans began to laugh. In London, comedian Tony Clark stood on stage in a packed theater, making jokes about the alien broadcasts. So these aliens think they can scare us by showing us death? Mate, we've got entire industries built around horror movies. We pay money to be scared. The audience erupted in laughter, and the sound was broadcast around the world. Other comedians joined in, turning the psychological attack into the biggest comedy show in human history. They show us disease, another comedian announced, but we've got doctors who work miracles every day. They show us loneliness, but we've got social media where we can connect with anyone, anywhere. They show us failure, but we've got entire cultures built around learning from mistakes. Zilrath watched in horror as his ultimate weapon was turned into entertainment. The humans were not just resisting his psychological attacks, they were enjoying them. Dr. Kate Williams studied the global psychological data with amazement. Dan, look at these numbers. Instead of breaking down, human mental health indicators are actually improving. People are connecting with each other, sharing stories, supporting each other. The alien attack is bringing us together. Colonel Dan Murphy allowed himself a small smile. They made a fundamental mistake, Kate. They assumed we'd be ashamed of our history. But the thing about humans is, we own our darkness. We know we're capable of terrible things, but we also know we're capable of incredible good. Commander Zilrath's crystalline form was now barely glowing. The psychological feedback from his failed attack was affecting his own mind. His lieutenant had already suffered a complete mental breakdown and had to be sedated. Commander, we must retreat, urged his second lieutenant. The humans are somehow reflecting our own attacks back at us. Several crew members are reporting severe psychological trauma. Zilrath looked at his instruments one last time. The human response was unlike anything in his species' long history of mental warfare. Instead of breaking under psychological pressure, humans had used it to strengthen their bonds with each other. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump, he commanded weakly. The mission has failed. As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Earth's population slowly returned to normal. The psychological attack had lasted only 6 hours, but its effects would be felt for years. The aliens had tried to weaponize human darkness against humanity, but they had underestimated something crucial about the human spirit. Humans had already faced their own darkness and chosen to rise above it. They had already confronted their capacity for evil and decided to strive for good instead. Dr. Kate Williams filed her final report on the incident. The aliens made a critical error in judgment. They assumed that showing humans their worst moments would destroy morale. They failed to understand that humans have already spent thousands of years examining their own flaws and working to improve. Colonel Dan Murphy added his own observations. Every civilization has darkness in its past. The difference is humans do. The Grand Assembly Hall on Confederation Prime had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 7 major species sat around the massive circular table, their forms as different as their worlds. This was the first time in galactic history that so many civilizations had joined forces against a single target. Supreme Admiral Kexvarath of the Kethvar stood at the center of the assembly, his energy form crackling with determination. His people could bend reality itself, warping space and time to their will. Around him sat the other alliance leaders, each bringing their greatest weapons to bear. The human problem has gone on long enough, Kexvarath announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Individual attacks have failed. Military force, biological warfare, and psychological manipulation have all been turned against us. But no species, no matter how adaptable, can survive a coordinated assault from the combined might of 7 civilizations. Hive Queen Silnathi spoke next, her thousands of voices creating an eerie harmony. My children number in the trillions. They think as one, act as one, and fear nothing. No enemy has ever survived our swarm tactics. Commander Morgul, a massive being of living stone, rumbled his agreement. Our planet killer weapons have reduced entire worlds to dust. We bring the power to crack solar systems. Admiral Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, humanity's flagship, watching the enemy fleet assemble on his tactical display. After 3 failed attacks, Earth had not been idle. Human engineers had worked around the clock, reverse engineering, captured alien technology and combining it with human ingenuity. Ma'am, we're looking at the largest invasion force in recorded galactic history, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Park. Engineer Sophie Chen looked up from her console. At 26, she was the youngest chief engineer in the fleet, but her modifications to human ships had already saved thousands of lives. Sir, the good news is we've had time to prepare. Every ship in our fleet now has adaptive shielding and reality anchor systems. Admiral Stone nodded grimly. How many ships are we facing total? Over 50,000, sir, from 7 different species. Each one brings their most advanced technology. The Kethvar alone have enough reality warping ships to remake entire star systems. The battle began 3 days later, not in Earth's solar system but in the empty space between stars. The alien alliance had learned from previous defeats. They would not underestimate human defenses again. Instead, they planned to draw the human fleet into open space and overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Supreme Admiral Kexvarath initiated the first attack wave. His reality-warping ships began to alter the fundamental laws of physics in the battle zone. Gravity reversed direction, time flowed backward in patches, and space itself began to fold inward. Reality bombs deployed, he announced to his allies. No ship can function when the universe itself becomes unstable. The human fleet sailed directly into the chaos. Admiral Stone watched as stars began spinning backward, and his ship's instruments went crazy. According to every law of physics, his ship should have been torn apart. Instead, something impossible happened. Human engineering teams began making repairs that shouldn't have worked. They rerouted power through systems that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. They stabilized their ships using spare parts and creative thinking. Sophie, how are we still flying? Admiral Stone asked his chief engineer. Sophie Chen wiped grease from her hands, having just crawled out of a maintenance shaft. Sir, we can't predict what the reality bombs will do to our systems, so I stopped trying. Instead, I built modular repair systems that can adapt to whatever weird physics we encounter. When gravity reverses, we just flip our engines. When time goes backward, we run our computers in reverse. That's impossible, Lieutenant Park protested. You can't just adapt to changing physical laws. Sophie grinned. You can if you stop worrying about what's supposed to work and focus on what actually does work. Humans have been jury-rigging impossible solutions for thousands of years. Across the battlefield, other human ships were performing similar miracles. When Kethvar reality bombs made their engines run backward, Human engineers simply reversed their flight controls and kept fighting. When space folded in on itself, human pilots treated it like flying through a three-dimensional maze. Supreme Admiral Kexvorath watched his reality weapons fail one by one. How are they adapting so quickly? No species should be able to function in unstable spacetime. Hive Queen Silnathi launched her next attack. Trillions of drone ships poured out of her hive vessels, each one controlled by her collective consciousness. They moved in perfect formation, overwhelming enemy defenses through sheer numbers and coordination. The human response was typically chaotic. Instead of fighting the swarm with coordinated tactics, individual human ships broke formation and began acting independently. Each captain chose their own targets, used their own strategies, and ignored standard military doctrine. The result was a nightmare for the hive mind. Silnathi had evolved to fight enemies that thought logically and acted predictably. Human tactics made no sense. Ships would retreat when they should attack when they should retreat, and use weapons in ways they were never designed for. The humans fight without coordination, Silnathi reported to her allies. They ignore their own commanders. Their actions are completely random. Captain Joe Martinez of the USS Lightning had broken off from the main fleet to pursue a group of hive ships. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Brooks, looked at him with concern. "Sir, we're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Standard doctrine says we should retreat and regroup." Joe shrugged. "Standard doctrine also says we can't fight. Reality-bending aliens with chemical rockets, but we did that anyway. Sometimes you have to trust your gut instead of the manual." His ship dove into the center of the swarm, firing weapons and ramming enemy vessels. Other human captains saw his success and began copying his tactics. Soon, dozens of human ships were carving through the orderly swarm formations, turning the battlefield into chaos. Commander Morgul deployed his planet-killer weapons next. Massive energy beams that could crack worlds lanced out toward the human fleet. These were weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. The human ships scattered like leaves in the wind, but not in any pattern the aliens could predict. Some ships flew directly toward the planet killers, others fled at right angles, and a few simply stopped moving altogether. "They're not following any retreat pattern," Morgul rumbled in confusion. "Their movements make no tactical sense." What the alien commander didn't understand was that human captains weren't following any pattern at all. Each one was making individual decisions based on instinct, experience, and sometimes just random chance. Captain Linda Foster of the USS Tornado decided to fly her ship directly into one of the planet-killer beams. Her crew thought she had lost her mind, but Linda had noticed something in the energy readings. "The beam is designed to destroy large solid targets," she explained as she flew closer to certain death. "But what if we're not solid anymore?" At the last second, she activated an experimental shield system that Sophie Chen had installed. Instead of trying to block the planet-killer beam, the shield converted the ship into a temporary energy state. The beam passed right through them harmlessly. "Ma'am, that was crazy," her tactical officer gasped. "Maybe," Linda agreed. "But crazy seems to work against these aliens." The battle raged for 8 months across 3 star systems. The alien alliance threw everything they had at the human fleet. Weapons that destroyed matter itself, viruses that infected ship computers, mental attacks that should have driven human crews insane, and technologies that had never failed in a million years of warfare. Every single weapon was countered by human creativity, adaptability, and sheer stubborn refusal to follow the rules. Supreme Admiral Kexvorath found himself in an emergency meeting with his fellow commanders. Half their combined fleet was gone, destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fair. "The humans have turned our reality weapons into navigation tools," he reported wearily. "They're using our planet killers to power their engines. They've somehow made our computer viruses work for them instead of against them." Hive Queen Silnathi's harmony had become a discordant wail. "My children are developing individual personalities from exposure to human tactics. The collective consciousness is fragmenting. I am losing control of my own forces." Commander Morgul's stone form was cracked and dim. "They rammed one of our planet killers with a cargo ship full of nuclear waste." The explosion created a temporary black hole that they somehow used as a slingshot to attack our command vessels. The truth was becoming clear to all of them. The humans weren't winning because they were stronger or more advanced. They were winning because they refused to accept that anything was impossible. Every time the aliens created an unbeatable weapon, humans found a way to beat it through methods that made no logical sense. Admiral Rick Stone received the alien surrender request on a Tuesday morning while drinking coffee and reading damage reports. The message was simple and desperate. We cannot continue this war. Human tactics are destroying our ability to function as military forces. We request immediate ceasefire negotiations. Sophie Chen looked up from her latest impossible repair job. Sir, should we accept? Admiral Saint. Ambassador Meltar stood outside the unmarked building in the Swiss mountains, his tall, elegant form wrapped in a diplomatic cloak. 5 years had passed since the Great Alliance's defeat, and the galaxy had spent every day of those years trying to understand what had gone wrong. Today, finally, he would get his answers. The human facility looked ordinary from the outside, but Meltar knew better. This was where Earth's most important decisions were made, hidden away from the curious eyes of both humans and aliens. 2 human guards led him through multiple security checkpoints, each one more sophisticated than the last. President Emma Davis waited for him in a simple conference room. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes, but Meltar had read her file. This unassuming human had coordinated Earth's defense against 3 major alien attacks and somehow made it look easy. Ambassador Meltar, welcome to Earth, President Davis said, gesturing to a chair across from her. I understand you have some questions for us. Secretary of Defense Chris Taylor sat beside the president, a tablet computer in his hands. He was younger than Davis, maybe 40, with the alert look of someone who had spent years expecting alien attacks at any moment. Meltar settled into his chair carefully. His species communicated through both words and color changes in their skin, and he wanted to make sure his diplomatic training showed. President Davis, I come here not as an enemy, but as someone seeking to understand. The Confederation has spent 5 years studying what you call the human problem. We need to know how you defeated us so completely. President Davis smiled. I think you're asking the wrong question, Ambassador. The real question isn't how we defeated you. It's why you thought you could defeat us in the first place. Dr. Alex Rivera entered the room carrying a thick folder of documents. As Earth's chief negotiator for alien relations, he had been preparing for this meeting since the war ended. He was a quiet man who preferred research to politics, but his understanding of alien psychology had been crucial during the recent conflicts. Ambassador, may I ask you a question? Dr. Rivera said as he sat down. When your people first detected our radio signals, what did you expect to find? Meltar's skin shifted to a pale blue, indicating thoughtful consideration. We expected to find a typical primitive civilization. Young species follow predictable patterns. They develop technology slowly, surrender quickly when faced with superior force, and integrate peacefully into the galactic community. And when we didn't follow that pattern, Chris Taylor asked, we assumed you were an anomaly, Meltar admitted. Every species we had encountered before followed the same basic behavioral rules. When threatened with overwhelming force, they calculate the odds and surrender. When faced with impossible challenges, they accept defeat. When shown their own weaknesses, they break down. President Davis leaned forward. But humans don't do any of those things. No, Meltar said, his skin shifting to a darker shade. You do the opposite of everything we expected. The more overwhelming the odds, the harder you fight. The more impossible the challenge, the more creative you become. The more we show you your weaknesses, the stronger you get. Dr. Rivera opened his folder and pulled out a series of charts and graphs. Ambassador, let me show you something our xenobiologist discovered while studying your people's evolutionary history. He spread the documents across the table. Each chart showed the development patterns of different alien species, tracking their evolution from primitive life to spacefaring civilizations. Notice the pattern, Dr. Rivera said, pointing to the charts. Every major galactic species evolved from either herd animals or hive creatures. Your people, the Zephyrians, the Kaithvar, the Silnathi, all of you developed from beings that lived in groups and followed leaders. Meltar studied the charts with growing understanding. Yes, this matches our biological history. Group survival was essential on most worlds. Now look at this, Dr. Rivera said, pulling out a chart showing human evolution. Humans evolved from pursuit predators. We were hunters who chased prey across vast distances, often alone or in very small groups. We had to be adaptable because our environment kept changing. We had to be persistent because our prey was faster and stronger than us. Chris Taylor picked up the explanation. That's why we confused you so much. You kept using tactics that work on herd animals, overwhelming force, intimidation, showing us how hopeless our situation was. But those tactics don't work on pursuit predators. When a herd animal sees a larger predator, it runs or submits, President Davis added. When a pursuit predator sees a larger predator, it looks for weaknesses and starts planning an attack. Meltar's skin color shifted through several shades as he processed this information. You're saying that our entire approach was fundamentally wrong from the beginning? Exactly, Dr. Rivera confirmed. Every weapon you used against us we treated as a puzzle to solve. Every overwhelming attack we saw as a challenge to overcome. Every demonstration of your superiority we took as motivation to prove you wrong. The ambassador was quiet for several minutes, absorbing the implications. This explains so much. The reality bombs that your engineers turned into navigation tools, the planet killers that you converted into power sources, the psychological attacks that only made you more determined. We've been studying your military reports, Chris Taylor said. Your commanders kept describing human behavior as impossible or illogical. But from our perspective, we were just doing what came naturally. President Davis stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountain landscape. There's something else you need to understand, Ambassador. We didn't defeat you because we're stronger or smarter. We defeated you because we think differently. How? So? Meltar asked. Dr. Rivera answered. Most galactic species think in terms of hierarchy and order. You calculate odds, follow procedures, and accept outcomes based on logical analysis. Humans think in terms of possibilities and exceptions. We ask what if instead of why not. We look for the one solution that everyone else missed. Your species would see a locked door and calculate the probability of opening it, Chris Taylor explained. Humans would try the handle first, then look for an open window, then consider whether we really need to go through the door at all. Meltar's skin had turned a deep purple, indicating profound revelation. So when we attacked with superior numbers, you didn't calculate defeat. You calculated opportunity. Right, President Davis said, turning back to the group. Every time you escalated, we adapted. Every time you brought new weapons, we found new solutions. The harder you tried to break us, the more creative we became. But surely there must be some way to defeat humans, Meltar said. Every species has weaknesses, Dr. Rivera smiled. Actually, there is a way. It's so simple that you probably never considered it. Tell me. Don't attack us, Chris Taylor said. The only reason we became your enemy was because you tried to conquer us. If you had approached us peacefully, we would have been happy to talk. Meltar sat back in his chair, his skin cycling through several colors as he processed this revelation. You mean the solution to the human problem was to not create a human problem in the first place? Exactly, President Davis said. Humans are natural problem solvers. When you attack us, you become a problem that needs solving. When you cooperate with us, you become a partner in solving other problems. The ambassador considered this for a long moment. What kind of problems? Dr. Rivera pulled out another set of documents. The galaxy faces many challenges that conventional thinking can't solve. Resource distribution, technological stagnation, conflicts between incompatible species, exploration of dangerous regions of space. These are all problems that require adaptive thinking and creative solutions, Chris Taylor added, things that humans are naturally good at. You're offering an alliance, Meltar realized. President Davis nodded. We're offering partnership. The galaxy spent 5 years trying to figure out how to kill us. Maybe it's time to figure out how to work with us instead. Meltar's skin shifted to a warm golden color, indicating agreement and optimism. What would you require in return? Access to galactic knowledge and technology, Dr. Rivera answered, and recognition that Earth is an independent world that chooses its own path. And if other species decide to attack humans in the future? Meltar asked. Chris Taylor's expression grew serious. Then they'll discover what you discovered. Humans don't break, don't surrender, and don't give up. We turn every attack into a learning experience and every weapon into a tool. But, President, Davis added with a smile, we'd much rather be friends than enemies. We're much more fun to work with than to fight against. Ambassador Meltar stood and formally bowed in the human style. I will take your proposal to the Confederation Council. I believe they will be very interested in exploring this partnership. 3 months later, the Galactic Confederation officially classified humanity as a protected adaptive species. The DUSAL classification came with a simple notation in the galactic database. Do not attack, do not attempt to conquer, do not underestimate, recommend immediate diplomatic contact for problem-solving assistance. Dr. Alex Rivera filed his final report on the negotiations. The so-called human problem was never really about humans being difficult to defeat. It was about the galaxy,